Once you already have some shapes, as we have here in our working file shapes.docx, you'll want to be able to move them, resize them, and potentially delete them. Now, deleting is probably the easiest thing. If we simply click on a shape, we can see it's selected because it has 2 white handles, because it's a line. With a normal shape, they have 6 white handles, so we've got resize options. So let's choose our line, and delete is simply the delete key on the keyboard, and it's gone. Now, obviously, if it was a mistake, you can do undo to bring it back. So it's just the same as any other object, any piece of text that you might want to get rid of and then bring back in Word. We can move the shapes very easily. Simply click anywhere over the shape and you'll get the 4-headed cursor arrow, and you can then move that shape. Now, what you will notice is there are the odd guidance of help. For example, if I pull this up quite close to the top margin, I get a green horizontal line that shows me that it's close to the top margin, effectively leaving it at the top margin. And on the left, it will do the same. Quite cleverly, if I move it towards the middle of the document, you see I get the vertical line down the middle, and that tells me that I have the middle of this object aligned with the middle of the document, and I can let go and know that this object is in the center of the page. Now, that's quite new to Word and obviously makes life a lot easier when you are trying to align things, because you can do it graphically. So that's all the margins pop up a little green horizontal or vertical line, and the center line does as well. That also works on the horizontal center. If we move down, there we go, we get the horizontal center line. So that rectangle will be perfectly in the middle. So I can move any objects around just by simply clicking on 4-headed arrow and move any of my objects quite happily. Be careful here with the text one, in that you have to be on the border but away from these little handles, which we're going to look at shortly, and then you can move it. So anything without text, you can just click anywhere, grab it, drag it, and drop it. Now, resizing, if we pick on the rectangle, it has 8 resize handles, 1 on each corner, and then 1 on each of the horizontal and verticals. If you stick with a corner one, it allows you to resize both horizontally and vertically, so the height and the width, and you can do that from any of the corners, depending on where you want the fixed point to be. So if I go with this corner here, it fixes this point and everything else moves in. If I go with this corner, it fixes that point and everything else moves in. Same with any of our shapes. They've all got these handles in the corners. If you go with any on the horizontal and vertical, so that one there, it gets a double-headed arrow, and when I click, it will only bring in the horizontal side. So the height would then remain the same, but I can then adjust that here. Same even with odd shapes like the smiley face and the heart, they still have the same number of handles. You're resizing the heart from any of the corners or on the horizontal and vertical planes. Now, if you hold down the Shift key when you go with any of the corners, that's just like when you drew the item in the first place with the Shift. It keeps it in the same ratio, shall we say. It doesn't keep it symmetrically perfect, because if you've adjusted it out of the symmetry perfect, like my little heart, if I adjust that without the Shift key and make it quite narrow, then go for a corner and hold the Shift key, it stays in the same proportions that I've left it, but doesn't take it back to that perfectly symmetrical shape that we had at the start. So only when you first draw the item does it keep it perfectly symmetrical. Shift key on an existing object keeps it in the same ratio, so the horizontal and the vertical values stay in the same ratio. So any shape can be done with its little handles for resizing. As well as being able to resize and obviously move, you'll find at the top of each of these shapes there is a rotate option. If we click there, we can actually rotate the smiley face. Same with the heart. The little rotation item is at the top. As soon as you select the shape, the rotate item is there, and I can click and drag that round. Notice that that doesn't have the same case with a line object, which only has 2 handles, but I can drag those in and move them around. So that's effectively the same as rotating anyway. It's just a normal full object like this that can be rotated, even with texting. So I can rotate my banner as well. Once they've been rotated, that's their new shape. You just click and drag and it stays at that rotation until you do it again, obviously. Now, if you hold down the Shift key when you're rotating, that helps to keep it at set points and means you can bring it back to the horizontal plane much easier than trying to just do that manually with your eyes. If I try that with the rectangle, that's actually quite hard to drop back at the rectangle position. Holding down the Shift key, it sort of snaps there. So we can take any existing shapes and resize them. We can move them, and should we not like them anymore, like the heart for example, I can just delete them by deleting on the keyboard.